Public schools continues to be near the top of the mayor's agenda. We hear the latest. And also this hour, will the governor side with the mayor on the Viaduct Tunnel? And what exactly are the benefits of annexing White Center? We talk about all this, and we encourage your questions and phone calls. Our number here, 684-8821, 684-TV21. Mayor Nichols, welcome.
Good evening.
We haven't heard much in the last few weeks about Norm Rice as superintendent. You have been pushing him. Is that boomlet, if you will, over at this point?
Well, CR, I don't know that it's over. I don't know that there ever was a boomlet. What I suggested to the school board was that Raj Manhas essentially resigned under pressure. His board had voted against a plan that he had presented and really didn't have a lot of option. His contract has another 6 or 7 months to run, and that's sort of the definition of lame duck. And that we're at a point where having a lame duck superintendent who doesn't have the complete support of the board for that length of time is troublesome. And secondly, we had a failed national search to talk about.
Why not just run a slate of people? I mean, 4 are up for re-election this fall, meaning fall of 2007. Why not just run a slate and you get behind a really great slate of candidates, you recruit them, you push them, and you do it the Democratic way instead of changing the rules and appointing the board. Get a new board in via the voters.
Well, first, I think we ought to take a look at what the evidence is showing. Is it more effective to have an elected board or an appointed board? There is some literature out there that's being developed that seems to indicate an appointed board is more effective. I think that's an important piece of information we should look at. But they say that the definition of crazy is to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. Well, what we do every couple of years is we throw out the school board members, which we did 3 years ago. 3 of them were defeated and 1 hadn't run. So it was a whole new slate. They came in, the new folks, and they're good folks. I know every one of them. They're good folks.
They work for you, a couple of them.
And we've chewed them up. And if any of them run for re-election, I think there's a very good chance that they won't win. And we'll bring in another group of really fine folks, and we'll chew them up. So I think we need to look at the underlying problem and figure out, is there a better way for us to do this so that we have a board that we can support and that can unify the community behind a plan for the schools.
One more schools question. I found it odd in some of the literature articles about Norm Rice where he questioned whether we ought to actually be closing schools. I mean, he almost suggested we reopen that closure question. That seemed like, boy, do you really want to open that again?
Well,
they had a hard-fought battle to at least get 7 schools closed.
I think one of the reputations that Norm had as mayor and as a city council member when I had the pleasure of working with him was that he comes to issues with an open mind. He listens to all sides and then he makes a decision. So I think maybe he was signaling to people who oppose the particular closures, you're going to get a hearing. If this happens, you will get a hearing. And I think that's a healthy thing. I think at the end of the day, he would have concluded that the financing of the district requires that a certain number of schools be closed. And if we continue to lose students, as I said, it's 1,400 students in the last 2 years, we're going to have to close more schools. We've got to figure out a way to bring people back into the system.
Topic number 2, the viaduct. We all are awaiting Chris Gregoire and her decision. What is taking her so long? She's had all this information for months, if not years.
Well, the legislature, at the last minute, at the end of the session earlier this year, gave her a couple of marching orders. One was to bring together an expert review panel, have that panel look at the projects and the alternatives and make a determination whether they were feasible to construct, and to look at the finance plans and determine whether those were reasonable. She did that. It was on a real short time frame. She got it done. They made some comments about the costing, the cost estimating. She had the Department of Transportation go back and they raised the estimate significantly, so it's a lot safer. It has a lot of contingency in it now. Now she's listening, I think, to a lot of voices about what the right choice is. I've had an opportunity to sit down with her face-to-face on a number of occasions, and she understands the issue. and I think she's trying to figure out how to move forward in the most appropriate way.
Why isn't she more excited about the tunnel?
Well, she's quiet about it. I wouldn't say she's not excited, CR. You know, she's hearing from all sides of this issue. She invited in people and took a look at the surface option, which is not one of the final two options the legislature even asked her to look at, to satisfy herself that she understood it and could make a reasonable decision about whether that was a feasible alternative. So I think she's doing this very deliberately, and I'm looking forward to her decision. I hope she makes the right decision, and that we move forward as partners.
It is very clear that you and the majority of the city council do not want to rebuild. I mean, that couldn't be clearer. You're putting ads in the paper and all the rest. How forceful are you in those meetings with her that if she chooses a rebuild, it's a non-starter for the city?
You know, I've been very clear with her. I don't go in and I don't pound the table and yell and tear my hair out. But I am very clear that an elevated structure, separate your garbage and what's recyclable and what's not recyclable. We then went a second step and we gave people warnings. Warning, you're putting the wrong things in your recycling, or you're putting the wrong things in your garbage. And then the third step was, we won't pick it up if you keep doing it. So I think the first step really is education. Educating the public as to what trans fats are and why they're bad for you. And secondly, educating food providers. We're now seeing a lot of national chains beginning to look at taking trans fat out of their foods. I think we ought to have a program where when a restaurant voluntarily pledges not to have trans fats, we give them a certificate they can put up on the wall. People can walk in there and know that they're not dealing with these harmful fats in the food. That would be the next step. And then I think you start to rev that up.
To mandate if those measures don't work.
But before there was a statewide ban on smoking in Seattle, 75% of the restaurants had gone smoke-free. So I think the education and the voluntary actions will take us a long way. But we need to have the conversation, and I'm very pleased the Board of Health is taking it up.
Back to the phones. Jan is with us from Queen Anne. Welcome to our program.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Jan. You're on live.
Okay, my question relates to what the mayor had said about education.
Yes.
The first, and it's really two parts. The first is I'm wondering how helpful it is to characterize the Seattle Public Schools as having a culture of low expectations, if he feels that characterization is going to tend to encourage parents to go ahead and set foot in the Seattle schools. That's the first part of my question.
Okay.
Let's get your second part, and then we'll have him answer both.
The second part is, how would he suggest that Seattle schools or any other urban school district cope with all the kids that arrive at school with no readiness to learn?
That's a great question. The first part, you know, I think that parents ought to demand that the schools set high expectations. I think the community should demand that. I think we should acknowledge that we're not doing that currently. When we brag about the fact that 58% of the kids passed all three portions of the WASL, ignore the fact that 40%, 42% didn't, I think we've said that we're setting our expectations pretty low. When we say we're better than the state average, well, the state's pretty mediocre. Do we want to be just above average in a state that's mediocre? I don't think so. I think we want to push the state to be in the top 10 in funding, in the top 10 in standards, and then we want Seattle to lead that pack, the state in academic excellence. So if we do that, I think that we will be able to have accountability. We will be able then to convince the legislature and the public to invest in a system that's producing results and is successful, as opposed to asking them to bail out a system that's failing. And in terms of encouraging parents to come back into the schools, I think we ought to reach out to the parent of every newborn. And we ought to say, come on down to the school. have a cup of coffee with us. We'd like you to get to know this school community. We'd like you to be part of it. Because there are many schools and many teachers that are doing a great job. I think it's the system as a whole that is not doing such a good job. There are a lot of examples where we're seeing people who are working very hard against all odds and succeeding. And we need to make that a culture for the district and have the leadership of the district support that goal. The second part was
How do you make sure kids are ready to learn?
the people of Seattle, and I believe this is unique in the United States of America, have on 3 occasions passed a family and education levy. That family and education levy is providing $16 million a year of support for at-risk kids. So we start with 4-year-olds. 4-year-olds, low-income 4-year-olds in our city have the opportunity for preschool, free preschool. It's high quality. We demand that it be high quality, and they then have an opportunity to go into kindergarten and first grade on a relatively equal footing with their classmates. We have families, we have facilities like the Burke-Gilman Trail, why our community centers are accessible for people to be able to come, get exercise, and be able to improve their health. I don't think you want to make it artificially difficult to get to transit. But I think looking at the efficiency of the stops and where they're located, I think that does make sense.
Viaduct mitigation. If you're a business that's literally on the waterfront, the ye old Curiosity Shop,
bet.
Elliot's Oyster House, all the rest,
Yeah.
how do you possibly stay in business during
Well,
all that
it's
construction,
tough.
no matter the option?
No matter the option, you're absolutely right. Whether it's a surface option or an elevated option or the tunnel option, it's going to be a mess down there. So
We're just going to buy them out?
Well, I think the range of options, that's one end of the range of options. And the other end is to look at relocating some of them maybe to the northern portion of the waterfront, north of where the viaduct heads up to the Battery Street Tunnel. Some that might work for. Some maybe it's buying them out. And others might be in less of a tourist-type industry. There are architectural firms and law firms that are in some of the piers along the waterfront. They might do just fine because they don't require that walk-in tourist business. So that's important, and we're working on a plan. We're working with those businesses. There are about 50 of them. And by the time we get to construction, we'll have a plan, and we will have figured that out.
And finally, the woman who talks about the school summit, you last month were talking about
we
it.
just talked about that. That was one of the things that I thought that former Mayor Rice could bring to the table. The fact that he had 16 years ago called a summit together. I think as superintendent, the first order of business for him would have been to call together another summit, bring the community together much as he did in 1990.
Why can't he do that just as a former mayor? Does he have to be the interim superintendent to lead something like that?
I think that we've started that conversation. I think what you're seeing in terms of the editorials and the letters to the editor, the questions that we're getting here, I think we're starting that conversation. I think it may well lead to a gathering or a summit of some sort.
Back to the phones. Dave is in Belltown tonight. Welcome, Dave. You are on Live with the Mayor.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. How are you?
How are you?
Fine.
Good.
I've always considered you a very progressive and good administrator, and I have a suggestion for you in running your government. Very simply, there are 52 weeks in the year and 26 letters in the alphabet. Why don't you streamline your government so all the issues of the permits that would go out would be, say, for the first 2 weeks for A, the second and third week for B, and so on through the alphabet. And therefore, you wouldn't have a big load. You would distribute the load work out in your whole community. This could be applicable not only to the city, but the county, state, and even the federal government.
Are you talking about building permits?
No, I'm talking about all permits.
What else would qualify? What kind of permits?
Well, for instance, you're building your B&O permits, okay? Your building
business
permits.
licenses, all the things.
Yeah, all
So
the licenses.
Instead of first come, first serve, which I guess
Right.
how it's done,
You
do it by
distribute-
alphabet.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get a response.
Well, it's an interesting thought. I honestly haven't thought of that before. I will tell you, a lot of what we do in city government is really is year-round. So you think about the major activities of city government, those are police and fire services, library, parks, human services, and those aren't really the kinds of issues that allow you to sort of put them on a cycle like that. They are on-demand services, and we need to be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in the case of public safety. In terms of the permitting of different activities, it seems to me that people are, not that organized. So if, I'm an A and my week has just gone by, I probably can't wait another 50 weeks to come back around. But in terms of business licenses or other processes that are predictable and renewable, much as driver's licenses would be for the state, there might be some efficiency in that. We should occasionally look at, whether there's a better way for us, much as the decision that West Seattle and Ballard and Georgetown made 100 years ago.
What concerns some of the council members who voted against
Yes.
that are the costs. I mean, that $5 million a year in ongoing services.
Right.
They also bring up a $6 million or so upfront cost. You'd inherit a fire station and maybe even a police station. You got to do some seismic upgrades, all the rest. And most importantly, they say the South Park Bridge, which is down in that area, would need somewhere between $100 and $200 million worth of repairs. That's a lot to take on financially.
The $5 million a year could be offset by the sales tax credit. So the ongoing operating cost would basically balance, not entirely, but pretty much. There's not a residential community in Seattle that generates as much revenue as it gets in service. That's why we have a downtown, a center of commerce that generates that activity that we then get revenue from. So with that sales tax credit, I think it's a reasonable financial decision. There are some upfront costs, as you say, about $6 million. We have an annual budget of about $700 million, so it would be about a 1% cost. Again, I think that, given it's one time, is something that we could absorb. The South Park Bridge is a different issue. That is expensive. It's a bridge that was built 80 or 90 years ago. It is a bascule bridge, like so many of them in Seattle, although it is older. And we would want to see that replaced or completely rehabilitated before we would take it on.
Because right now, it is a county responsibility.
It's a county bridge. It is at the end of its useful life, and we don't think that it is reasonable for that to be then absorbed by the city. We think it ought to be turned over in a good condition. But that's not the area that we're talking about in White Center. It is not part of the annexation that we would look at in the White Center area. The South Park area, we would be happy to look at that, but the bridge issue's got to be dealt with.
So the potential annexation area doesn't include this bridge.
It may or may, I'm not sure technically if it's in the potential, but the boundaries that we would agree to look at in an annexation would exclude that until such time as that bridge issue was resolved.
What's the benefit? I mean, you say that we can maybe absorb this in our budget.
Yeah.
Other neighborhoods don't necessarily pay for themselves. But what's the compelling reason to add another neighborhood that doesn't pay for itself?
Well, I'll tell you, 100 years ago, in 1907, West Seattle, Ballard, South Park, Georgetown were separate cities. And in that year, all of them, and Rainier Beach was an unincorporated neighborhood. And all of those communities voted to become part of Seattle. And what would Seattle be without Ballard, without Georgetown, without West Seattle, South Park, or Rainier Beach? We would be less of a city. And I don't just mean fewer people, but we are a city of great neighborhoods, and we all kind of come together to make the whole. White Center is on the opposite side of a random boundary, Roxbury. I don't know why Roxbury is the boundary. I don't think there's anyone out there who could tell you why it's the boundary. But it's an artificial boundary. People on the other side of the line, when they talk to their relatives back east or somewhere else, they say, I live in Seattle. And people who live on the Seattle side of that line see the people on the other side as their neighbors just as much as if they were both in the city.
But then it's
So
already
part
a
of-
Seattle neighborhood.
It's part of our community, but it is, by accident of history, not a part of the city. Doesn't have access to police service or our fire services or our library or parks or human services, although many of the people access those services already. So I think it's acknowledging that it's part of our community, that over the long term, we are, one community, and allows us then to move forward in that spirit.
Cal's on the phone tonight from Squire Park. Welcome.
Yes, hi,
Hello.
Mayor Nichols. I wanted to say first that I am happy to see you proceeding with the support for the tunnel, because I do find the viaduct as an eyesore now, and that area is such a vibrant tourist area, and it's very beautiful in its own way, but that is an obstacle in beauty. And the other thing I was going to say is that I used to be against your idea about the South Lake Union trolley.
Okay.
But I kind of came up with some ideas, and I kind of was able to get to your office and give you guys my written stuff, because I'm a homebound person.
Okay.
And
Mayor Paul Schell, who is a friend of both Parks in Seattle and friend of Salmon.
Thank you, Ken. How's this? That better? We'll also fight the wind a little bit as well. I'm happy to be back here and see the complete transformation from what was a scruffy industrial area that wasn't habitable to anybody, much less the salmon or the natural wildlife. And I'm thrilled to see salmon, eagles, I'm told, are back, falcons, great blue herons, and other wildlife returning to our shoreline. When we did the groundbreaking in the fall or November of 1998, I can remember how scruffy it really was, and I wondered whether it would be possible to take what was a site of an old lumber mill and turn it back to the point where we do welcome back the wildlife. I'd like to thank everybody who made this possible, from the federal, the state, and tribal, and the local agencies of the Elliott Bay Duwamish Restoration Program. And in particular, it's nice to see the Seattle Parks Department, which bought the land, and the Seattle Public Utilities to come up with the money to fund the $2.1 million of investment that you see out here. $2.5 million to buy the land, $2.1 million to put it in the condition it is. The Duwamish River has played an important role in our history. From tribal economies as a transportation route for farm goods to downtown Seattle from the Green River, and as a shipping hub for goods to Alaska and elsewhere, as well as a major port to the Pacific Rim. Just think about it. It's the ultimate mixed-use transportation facility that we started with here, and we're making sure that it is still placed for its original purpose, which was to maintain a home for salmonoids as they make their way back up through their spawning grounds as well as out to sea. That this is all part of nature's cycle, and that we in the human condition are doing what we can to be good stewards of the land that we are using. It's also good to be back here in West Seattle. It seems I'm here every other week opening up a new park, Alex. It was just a couple of weeks ago when we did Cormorant Cove Park. We've done Constellation Park. The amount of investment in reclaiming our waterfront and making sure that it works for all of us, the citizens as well as the salmon, is what I think will make our city special, will continue to make our city special. This is just one of the many pieces of the strategy that the city of Seattle is undertaking to ensure that we do right by the salmon, that they are an endangered species, but more importantly, they're an indicator species of how we're doing in maintaining the quality existence, in honoring the land. And I say this maybe more than I should, but I am struck by the Chief Seattle statement about that we're not inheritors of this earth, we're borrowing it from our children, and that tells us we need to be good stewards of the earth that we occupy and make sure that there's room not only for our children, but for the salmon in our future. And I think it's going to take more investments like this where people work together. If we continue to put the pieces together, restoring our urban streams, doing right by the habitat that we have in tough areas like the Duwamish, that in the end our children will thank us for the efforts that we've made on their behalf. Thank you.
Restoration program. Dr. Clark?
Thank you, Superintendent Bounds. On behalf of the Elliott Bay Duwamish Restoration, now the Elliott Bay Duwamish Restoration panel is made up of the Natural Resource Trustees. The sovereign tribal representatives are from the Muckleshoot Indian Tribe and the Suquamish Tribe. The state trustees are from the Washington Department of Ecology, Fish and Wildlife, and Natural Resources. The funding for this came from a federal court across the river where some of that will take place. Up to $2 million for source control that related to panel activities over and above the ongoing source control that the county and the city were doing.
Both an estuarine area and a place for salmon to rear and a place for people to enjoy can all coexist side by side. We need to think about our job of restoring the fish as one in which we humans who have gotten them in trouble need to adapt. Well, thanks very much for inviting me here today, and we appreciate your support.
Diana Gale, who's the Director of Seattle Public Utilities. And as I mentioned earlier, we in the Department of Parks and Recreation, using Shoreline Park Improvement Funds, purchased this property, but we knew we couldn't develop it to what it needed to be as a habitat area, and that was something that we partnered with the Seattle
these communities, and they know that Seattle is a very diverse city. Each of our precincts requires different levels and types and kinds of policing. I have the utmost confidence and faith in these individuals, and certainly in the members of the Seattle Police Department. And it's really probably most important that you hear from them rather than from me. So I guess I could start with Tom Byers, and then we'll just work our way down the list. Tom.
Good afternoon. I'm the commander currently of the South Precinct, and what excites me the most about my current assignment and what's going to happen in the future is I can be even more responsive to the citizens of Southeast Seattle and address their needs and be more accountable to them and be able to provide resources in a more timely manner. Currently, right now, one day I could have a problem in Alki I got to deal with, and then the next day it's Rainier Beach. And as you know, the South Precinct is a pretty big geographical area, so I'm looking forward to the ability to, when the split happens, to be able to serve Southeast Seattle in a lot more effective manner. Thank you.
I'm Dan Oliver. I'm the precinct commander of the North Precinct. I've been there about approximately 1.5 years. When I was assigned out to the North Precinct, the chief called me and he said the reason why he picked me is that I was raised in the North End. I'd gone to school there and I knew it. He suggested that I find a problem and work with the neighborhood and see if we could resolve it. And he says, you find the problem. So we found Aurora Corridor. By working with the Aurora's merchant associations and the neighbors on both sides, a very narrow stretch of land, we were able to come up with a very focused problem, come up with a short chain of accountability, and working with the sister agencies, we were able to make a difference. And since that time, he's asked us to find a second problem. I thought I did my job. Well, now we're working on University Avenue, and we're going to use the same plan that we see here the chief's developed in his vision, which is we're going to go back to neighborhood policing. We're going to try to be very focused, have a very streamlined chain of command to work on a specific problem. And we'll have a specific timelines in order to cure the problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Captain.
Morning, I'm Captain Mike Sanford. I'm the commander of the Downtown Seattle Precinct, and I truly have the honor of both following the footsteps of Jim Pugel, who's the former precinct captain, and working with the very best police officers that the city has to offer. In downtown, we're trying a number of innovative approaches to dealing with the drug problems that we see. Downtown has had a number of open-air drug trafficking areas that have been in downtown for a number of years, and we've tried a number of innovative approaches to move those out of downtown, and we'll continue to do that with the new resources that are being focused on the precinct. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Pryor, and I have the privilege of being the one to commission this new Southwest Precinct. It's kind of a unique opportunity, not only as it's a new facility, but it's also the area where I grew up. And so being over there and looking at the trees that were planted then, and now they're there, It just signifies the time that has gone by and how much change has occurred. For the next several months until the precinct is dedicated, I'll be spending my time working on the facilities, the logistics, the staffing, bringing it all together so that when the doors open, we're ready to go. Thanks.
Good morning. My name is Fred Hill, and this is my first day as the commander of the East Precinct. As a matter of fact, I've only been a captain for the past 12 hours.
Throwing you in the deep end.
In the deep end. I really look forward to this because I view it as a challenge. 30 years ago, I was the Broadway beat man, and I've seen a lot of changes on Capitol Hill and the Beacon Hill area. And I'm quite familiar with the area. I haven't worked up here exclusively, but I do feel that I know the neighborhood quite well. For a while, I even lived up here. And I think that the East Precinct is probably the city's most diverse precinct. And I am blessed to have, I think, some of the finest officers. With some of the cutbacks that we're looking at in the budget, I don't look at it as an obstacle, but more of a challenge. I think that with these very fine officers, we can make the situation a little bit better and well serve the people of the East Precinct. Thank you.
We'd be happy to take any general questions you have and then give you a chance to meet the precinct commanders one-on-one and have a conversation with them. So in May, I asked a distinguished group of individuals to give up their summer to help deal with some of the questions about the utility's future. Moving into the utility's second century of service, what changes are needed? Is the utility properly structured? Are we managing risks and finances properly? What does the mayor and city council need to do to make sure we are properly informed and engaged on complex issues? How can we keep rates stable and finances strong? I'm very pleased at the report that I have received today. It's an excellent report. It gives me a roadmap for continued improvement at City Light. It confronts issues clearly and directly, and it gives me thoughtful advice and acknowledges a few disagreements on difficult questions. This was work well spent for the City of Seattle and for the customers of City Light. I want to thank Sharon, Sam, Randy, Keith, and Craig for your great work. And one of the members of our committee, Rich Sonstely, couldn't be with us today, but in his absence, I want you to please pass my thanks on to him as well. Today, I want to talk about how I'm going to respond to this report, but first I would like to introduce Sharon Nelson, who is chair of the group that tackled this job and did a terrific job, even though at the expense of summer sunshine. She's going to talk about the work of the committee and their conclusions. If you take a look at the back of the report, there is a description of the members of the committee and their background, so I'm not going to repeat that, but needless to say, Sharon and the rest of the members of the committee bring a wealth of expertise. Sharon?
Thank you, Mayor Nichols. On behalf of the committee, we want to thank you for this opportunity to serve the city. We are proud of the work product we're bringing to you today. And I also thank my fellow committee members and Rich Sonstely for their excellent contributions. We had a lot of input from many people. We read a lot of documents, and we built on the expertise of each other to produce this report. I hasten to emphasize this is not a retrospective audit of the recent past. That was not our charge. Instead, as you requested, we looked to the future, and we looked especially to the governance of the city, of City Light in its current environment. And the gist of the report is that City Light requires an infusion of time, brains, and talent and resources in order to manage in a very changed, volatile, dynamic market environment. The report, the main recommendation is that an advisory board of independent, experienced, strategic thinkers be convened as soon as possible to bring a new level of oversight to the utility management and a new level of business sophistication and advice to the mayor and the city council. The committee is unanimous on this point. We divided on the degree of independence this board should have, but we are unanimous that the board should be convened as soon as possible. If it proves not to be effective, then over a period of time, we recommend that the mayor and the city council go further and think about more independence and a true fiduciary and independent board. This, however, would require a change in state law and city charter. So for now, we think an independent advisory board will, populated with the right kind of people, will really serve City Light well. We spent a lot of time and a lot of thought went into these recommendations. I understand the member of the press have a summary of the 10 points recommendation. Besides the advisory board, we've made very specific and pointed recommendations about staffing the mayor's office and staffing the city council so that the utility can have the benefit of these important elected officials' meaningful input into their processes and into their policies. And so with that, stand by for questions. The members of the committee here, we all had portions of the report we feel more or less responsible for, and I will ask them to chime in should the press have questions about any specific recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. The committee's report identifies what needs to be done to make sure that the mayor and the council get the right information, get the right staffing on highly complex and technical issues, and then pay attention to what we get. So let's get started.
For giving us their preliminary report on their audit findings. I'd like to thank Councilmember Jim Compton for initiating this audit. I want to thank the Municipal League for their interest in City Light and their public review of the utility earlier this year. Their work largely shaped the direction of the independent audit and will now leave a lasting impression on the future of public power in Seattle. I want to stress that today's presentation highlighted the preliminary findings of the auditor's team. We're looking forward to a final report in the coming weeks to help the council, City Light, and the mayor move forward with utility reforms for the benefit of our ratepayers. But with that said, today's report offers insight and recommendations into 4 areas to be improved. Additional independent oversight. There was a recommendation to form an Office of Utility Oversight to ensure the council and the mayor have independent access to technical staff overseeing Seattle City Light's O&M budget, CIP budget, and all of their policies and planning. The second is broader council participation. There was a recommendation to increase the Energy Committee and its membership. That may be one way we can accomplish greater council participation. Another may be to restructure committees at the council, to combine the Parks and Neighborhoods Committee so that we can have additional membership in our Utilities Committee, or to have committee of the whole meetings where all members once a quarter are engaged in all the activities and decisions regarding our utilities. The third is for greater stakeholder involvement. And stakeholder involvement is a critical piece to public power. There is a recommendation to come forward. It's also a component of the Mayor's Task Force to set up a citizens advisory panel that would help us with strategic planning, with risk management policies, and with rate setting and overall planning at the utility. And the last is to enhance City Light's operational policies. Recommendations have come forward to review and update the risk management manual, that this is a critical first step as we move forward. As we estimate loss limits and we have clear implementation procedures for these limits, it's important that City Light, being an active trader, have limits in place as we move forward on a comprehensive assessment of risk management. And that we have City Light's cooperation with an operational review of the O&M and CIP budgets with also additional expertise at the management level and utility expertise. So these are some of the areas in need of improvement. Those are some of the recommendations that have come forward in the preliminary audit. And I'll turn the microphone now over to the Vice Chair for the Energy Committee, Councilmember Jim Compton.
I'm very proud of this audit because I think that we got terrific value for the city We got what we asked for, which is that we wanted an examination of the utility and what went wrong without bias and without exempting anybody, and that means that that executive and council and the utility itself were all there for examination. We told them we were not there to assign blame, but to restore the health of a beloved utility. And I tend to use these sort of value-laden words when I talk about City Light because I have a long, lifelong interest in public power and its preservation and the values that it represents in fostering economic growth in the Northwest. I've often called it the jewel in the crown. I don't know if I said it first, but boy, I like the way everybody's picked that up because I think even the mayor's report had that in it. But
I think you did.
yeah. Anyway, we went outside and we expanded the scope of this study, and I think the forthright study we got really shows that this is an objective effort. Everybody was whacked pretty equally. The council, I think, learned a lot about the need to communicate and the need to raise our level of understanding of these issues. The other big message from this that came out was that the trouble we're in now is not just about California, not just about the deregulation crisis. It's about an accumulation of policies and errors, really, that extend back into the early 90s and that have to do with the city's reliance, or the council, the utility, and the executive all being willing to rely more on debt to dangerous levels. And I think that one of the important findings in this study is that during the electricity storm, whatever you want to call it, that the council and the utility.
You want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make that change.
Thank you to the Garfield High School Band and the TT Minor Chorus. Welcome to you all. This is an historic day for Seattle. My name is Karen Daubert. I'm the director of the Seattle Parks Foundation, and please come up if you can't hear. I don't want to yell. But this is just such an honor for the Seattle Parks Foundation and for the city and for the central area. For those of you that don't know much about the Seattle Parks Foundation, we're just over a year old. We've completed 3 children's play area projects in Southeast Seattle. We're working on 5 other neighborhood projects, South Lake Union Park, but by far and away, this is our most exciting project. It is such an honor to be involved with this project, a gift of this magnitude that has the impact on an underserved community and that is named and given in honor of such an incredible individual that has touched so many lives, Dr. Homer Harris. If it was not for Dr. Harris, truly this gift would not be given. We would not be here today. Without further ado, I'm going to ask the board of the Seattle Parks Foundation to come up, and President Doug Walker and Honorable Greg Nichols, Superintendent, and Superintendent of Parks Ken Bounds, all to come up. The whole board, everybody, and hold, or no, don't hold it up. Why don't you come over this way? All right. It is with great honor that we give a check for $1.3 million to the City of Seattle for Homer Harris Park. And our Honorable Greg Nichols, Mayor of the city.
Well, thank you and good morning. I hope that you noticed over the last few months
since I became mayor that the weather has certainly improved in our city. We are so lucky on this mid-November day to be able to do a couple of things in this glorious weather. You know, we all as human beings share the same hopes and dreams, and that is that we're able to make a difference in our world, a difference for the better. And today we're going to acknowledge and thank some people who have done that. First of all, the anonymous donor who has made today possible, who did not want to be acknowledged by name, but who, by their generosity, has made this whole experience today possible, and for this experience to be continued for years and years and years into the future as a glorious new park in this neighborhood. Thank you. You represent a spirit, I think, the true spirit of Seattle. Secondly, we are coming together today to be able to acknowledge the contributions of one of our true hometown heroes, a pioneer in our community, Dr. Homer Harris. Dr. Harris, you and my son share one thing in common. You're both graduates of Garfield High School in the same century. Your contributions to our community, your achievements, academic, athletic, and professional, are a true role model for all of us. Most of us search for that one way that we can make a difference in this world. You found a number of ways to make a difference, and I want to thank you for that. It is a great honor for me to be here today participating in this presentation.
As Seattle's first black native son, and whereas Dr. Harris was a nationally recognized athlete as a football and track and field star, and he was recognized as one of the 3 greatest athletes in Seattle's history in 1976, and whereas after graduating from medical school, Dr. Harris was one of the city's most prominent and beloved doctors for 43 years, and in 1989 was honored as a pioneer black doctor, and whereas a ceremony to celebrate this significant event will be held on November 13, 2002 at the future location of the new park. Now therefore, I, Gary Locke, Governor of the State of Washington, do hereby proclaim November 13, 2002 to be Dr. Homer Harris Day in Washington State. And I urge all citizens to join me in this special observance.
Carver Gayton's life has paralleled Dr. Homer Harris's in many ways. He was a Garfield High School graduate, he's a University of Washington football legend, and he excelled academically, receiving a PhD in political science. And like Homer, his family still lives and is active in Seattle. He has made outstanding contributions professionally and personally to the community. Carver Gayton.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to congratulate Homer Harris. From my point of view, this is something that has really been long overdue in relation to having some sort of recognition, significant recognition for what Homer has done over the years. I also want to thank the donor, the anonymous donor. Maybe one day we'll find out who that person was. But this is really important. Homer, it's really important that it's right here because Homer grew up just a few blocks down the road. I grew up in this neighborhood. My grandmother lived about a block away, and an uncle lived about a block away. I remember the days when we would play in the fields at Madrona Park and at Garfield Park. And down at Washington Park, that beautiful lush green park down there in Washington Park. Remember when it was green down there at Washington Park? And we would dream, you know, those of us who were interested in becoming football players, we would dream of one day maybe being like Homer Harris. You know, I grew up with my mother and father and my uncles talking about this fellow, Homer Harris, ever since I can remember. He said not only was he a great athlete, they emphasized the fact he was a fine athlete, but he also was an outstanding scholar. And he was going to medical school, finishing up medical school. He was going to become a doctor. And I said, my goodness, this is just unbelievable. And then over the years, I had no indication, no feeling of likelihood that I would ever meet this man. And then one day, you know, found out he was moving back into town with his family. And I was invited over to the house, you know, to meet the family, you know, to meet Mrs. Harris, to meet Hope, also known as Tootsie, and also Heather. And I got to know the family. I've been close with them ever since. And I had no idea that I was going to meet this man that I admired, you know, so much over the years. You know, I would go at look at the trophy cases up at Garfield High School and see all these names of this man that broke all of these different records in so many different sports, and also had recognition in terms of what he had achieved academically. One thing I could not figure out, as I recall, he excelled in track and in baseball, and I need to ask Homer this: how could you excel in track and baseball when they're going on at the same time of the year? But he was able to do that. And I think that he really epitomized. We throw around this term scholar athlete, but he really represents what that term is all about: being an outstanding scholar and an outstanding athlete. And he has influenced generations of young men, particularly African American men, in terms of what he has done. In terms of
important policies around the line, it's important to communicate very directly and to remind people of commitments that are made. And I will never hesitate from using the power of the mayor's office in order to get good things done for this city.
Now, we heard a lot today about
Sure.
some of the funding that was restored.
Yes,
You mentioned a few other things that were cut. Anything else notable that was cut that perhaps we didn't hear about today? Because we heard a lot about what funding was restored.
Well, there were some very hard decisions that were made in this budget, both in the proposal that I gave to the council and what the council ultimately adopted. There were some 400 positions eliminated from city government. Those are real people who do real jobs, important jobs for the people of Seattle. There were library hours cut, acquisition budget cut, human services cut, police officers cut, firefighters cut. There are hard decisions made in this budget. As I said, 99% of what I proposed in terms of those cuts, the council adopted today. Those are things that, if we were in better economic times, many we would have done because they're efficiencies. Some of those I think we would rather not have had to make, but the reality of our economy says we have to have a sustainable budget, and we do.
It's been painted a
Yes.
little bit as a bricks instead of bread. Is that an accurate assessment? Or is that
Well, one of the things I said 2 months ago in presenting my budget was that I don't think you can pit, people versus potholes. That was really brought home to me a month and a half ago when we were breaking ground for some low-income housing up in the Greenwood neighborhood. 31 units of housing for homeless families. The only place that the kids are going to have to play who live in that transitional housing is about 5 blocks away. There are no sidewalks between the park and that housing. A community is a lot of things. It's economic opportunity for people. It is an infrastructure that supports a healthy economy. It's a community that has values that make sure that people don't get left behind. And all of those things are important. I've learned a lot in this budget. It's my first budget as mayor, first budget not on the legislative side. As I say, I think we've come to a place here where we've got a budget that maintains the important things we need to maintain, focuses on those basic services people count on the city providing, across a wide spectrum: public safety, transportation, parks, libraries, human services.
You had the 5% cut in your funding for your office?
The executive department, yes, right.
And so is that's a larger cut than what you wanted? Just so that I'm clear on the whole note thing and the issue of the funding for your office, you wanted an increase. Did you want it above? Did you want that increase above your current funding from last year, or was that above the cut that they had planned? Is that a convoluted question?
A little bit, but that's okay because it was sort of a convoluted issue.
Yeah, see, I'm just coming
right.
to anything late, so I apologize to everybody.
Yeah, the executive department is the mayor's office, the budget office, the policy office called OPM, intergovernmental relations. Across that department, my proposed budget had a 5% cut. Within that, there were different levels in each of those offices, each of those units, if you will. The council was looking to make a small reduction in its own budget and a small reduction in my office proposal, which I had agreed to. I wanted to make it very clear to the council that we had an agreement, that I was going to live by that agreement, but I expected the council to live by that agreement as well.
How many extra people are you hiring with that extra money that you're getting next year?
None. It's going to be the same level of staffing as we've had up here.
So that's because you're borrowing people from other departments?
It's a much more straightforward way of showing it, yes.
More questions?
All right, let's remember every vote counts, and it's going to be very interesting this time tomorrow to see how that stacks up with the monorail. Great. Thank you very much. Well, good morning. A month ago, Chief Kurlikowski and I announced a new approach to neighborhood-based policing in Seattle. And today is an opportunity for us to kind of get acquainted with the new, not new in most cases, 4 out of 5 cases, but with the folks that we're looking to in our precincts to be our chiefs of police in our neighborhoods. I want to acknowledge first Chief Gil Kurlikowski, who is here with me. Chief Harry Bailey and Chief Jim Pugel. Chief Bailey and Chief Pugel are the direct supervisors of our precinct commanders and share that responsibility for the 4, soon to be 5 precincts. But I particularly want to acknowledge our precinct commanders, the captains who are on the front line. From the North Precinct, Captain Dan Oliver, Captain. From the South Precinct, Captain Tom Byers. From the East Precinct, Captain Fred Hill. Captain, thank you for having us in your home here today.
Thank you for coming.
And from the West Precinct, Captain Mike Sanford. Captain. And the new precinct, which will open up early in 2003, Captain Pryor, welcome and congratulations. We're looking forward to having that new precinct in Southwest. That's going to be a great addition to the community. These 5 folks are not replacing Chief Kurlikowski, and it certainly would take more than 5 to replace the chief, but they are going to be given new responsibility and a small amount, although not much, in this tough budget year, resource to be able to run their precincts and deal with crime on a neighborhood level. Each precinct commander is going to have that responsibility, have those resources. They know what the most critical issues are within their neighborhoods. Neighborhood-based policing makes the most sense in using our limited resources in tough times, but it's also a good strategy for us to use during any economic time. We're going to place our resources where they're most needed. The precinct captains know where those areas are, the issues, the concerns, the neighbors, and the trends, and they're in the best position to make effective police strategy calls. My budget will give them the responsibility and, as I said, some small increase in resources, not as much as I would like, but during a recession, it's a start. So with that, I'd like to ask Chief Kurlikowski to make some comments, and as I said, this is a get acquainted session for our 5 precinct commanders.
Thanks,
Chief?
Mayor.
You bet.
Well, this is a little bit of a transition for us, and we would have done this a little bit sooner, but we wanted to make sure that you had flyers and brochures and backgrounds on each of these 5 precinct captains. And the last picture of Captain Hill was 1960s something, and so we actually had to get a newer. Although he looks pretty much the same as that original picture. But we're really basing all of our focus at the neighborhood precinct level, and we're basing it among these 5 captains. And certainly, as you know, with Assistant Chief Harry Bailey and Assistant Chief Jim Pugel, about a year ago we divided up the city into half. Well, now we're kind of dividing it up into fifths, smaller kind of bite-sized chunks, so that they can deal with the problems on a local level. The other important part for people to remember, besides getting to know the 5 individuals in this room that actually make the difference through their resources, through the people that work with them, and through the community, is that there's literally well over 100+ years of experience among these 5 individuals. When we look at our patrol officers, oftentimes in our precincts, the range can be from 3 to 5 years experience. Good people, well-trained, doing a terrific job. But the years of experience that each of these individuals, and Chief Bailey and Chief Pugel, bring really add that element that makes such a difference in a community. It's the kind of knowledge and background and experience, whether they grew up in the area that they happen to now be commanding, as is the case with Jim Pryor, or as others have spent many, many years in those precincts. They know these operations. They know the...
Chief, you want to talk a little bit about that and how that fits into our plan?
Part of the racial profiling plan that was issued by the mayor and myself several months ago included quarterly meetings in each of the precincts, and they're neighborhood or community meetings. And it isn't just focused on racial profiling incidents or complaints. It's really focused on getting a chance to for people that live or work or have a business in each of these 5 commands to sit down with the precinct captains or attend these meetings and say, look, here's what's working well, here's what might not be working so well. How can we all get together and make things better? And I